The preservation chamber hummed with ancient energy, its metallic walls glistening under soft blue emergency lights. Jay's eyes flickered open, his body stiff from centuries of suspended animation. Frost crackled around his skin as he slowly moved his fingers, then his hands, testing each muscle group with careful precision. Around him, 37 identical preservation pods stood in perfect geometric alignment. Soft beeping sounds indicated that the other pods were beginning their reactivation sequence. Jay noticed Yuna in the pod next to him, her breathing becoming more regular with each passing moment. The complex was silent except for the mechanical whispers of awakening technology. Diagnostic screens flickered to life, displaying complex data streams that tracked vital signs, environmental conditions, and system integrity. Something had triggered their awakening. A pre-programmed protocol that had waited silently for hundreds of thousands of years. Jay pressed his palm against the transparent chamber wall. His muscles ached, a testament to the long hibernation. Training kicked in and he began a series of slow, calculated movements to restore circulation. Each breath felt heavy, loaded with anticipation and uncertainty. A sudden hiss broke the silence. Yuna's preservation pod opened, releasing a cloud of preservation gas. She emerged like a figure from an ancient dream, her movements deliberate and controlled. Their eyes met. A silent communication passed between them, a shared understanding of the magnitude of their situation. "Diagnostic check," Yuna whispered, her voice rough from centuries of disuse. Her fingers danced across a holographic interface, pulling up critical information about their preservation mission. The pods around them continued to activate. One by one, the other team members stirred: Hoon, Day, Kai, and Sue. Each moved with the precision of trained professionals, their bodies remembering protocols embedded through years of preparation. Jay noticed something unusual about the preservation chamber. Subtle changes suggested that the environment had been maintained, but not by human hands. Microscopic repair systems had kept everything in perfect condition, working silently through millennia. "Power system stable," Day announced, his voice cutting through the tension. "Preservation protocols maintained at 99.998% efficiency." Yuna approached a central control panel, her fingers tracing holographic projections. Historical records, mission logs, and environmental data began to unfold before them. The last entry was dated centuries before their awakening, a final message from the team that had initiated their preservation mission. The message was simple but profound. Preserve. Protect. Restart. Hoon moved toward the external seal, his hand hovering over the activation mechanism. Everything depended on this moment, the first contact with a world that had forgotten humanity. "Ready?" he asked, looking at Jay. Jay nodded. No elaborate speeches, no dramatic declarations, just a simple acknowledgement of their shared purpose. The seal began to disengage, mechanical locks clicked, hydraulic systems pushed, and the first traces of external atmosphere began to filter into the chamber. The team checked their environmental suits, ensuring every seal was perfect, every protection mechanism in place. Something waited beyond those doors. A world transformed, a planet that had continued its journey long after humanity's apparent extinction. Yuna's hand rested on a small device, a genetic reconstruction kit. Their mission was more than survival. They carried the potential to restart an entire species, to rewrite the narrative of human existence. The preservation chamber continued its awakening dance. Lights pulsed, machines whispered. 37 humans prepared to meet a world they had never known. Jay looked at his team, survivors, pioneers, the last seed of humanity, and then the external seal opened. A lavender sky greeted them. Crystal formations that looked like living machines stretched toward the horizon. The atmosphere shimmered with microscopic organisms that danced like living mist. The landscape stretched before them like a painting from an alien dream. Crystal, structures that resembled trees rose from the ground, their surfaces shifting between solid and translucent with each passing moment. Hoon's environmental scanner beeped softly, its readings unlike anything in human historical records. Day moved. First, his boots leaving careful imprints on ground that seemed to breathe. Microscopic organisms swirled around their feet, creating intricate patterns that dissolved and reformed with each step. The air felt alive, not just breathable, but actively responsive to their presence. Atmospheric composition is strange, Una muttered, studying her handheld device. Oxygen levels were present, but mixed with elements they couldn't immediately identify. The lavender sky pulsed with soft light, occasionally revealing complex geometric patterns that disappeared as quickly as they formed. Jay noticed the first sign of previous civilization, remnants of structures that were neither completely organic nor entirely mechanical. Massive foundations of what might have been buildings stood partially buried, their surfaces covered in a glowing moss-like substance that seemed to communicate through light pulses. "Look," Kai pointed, breaking the team's careful silence. In the distance, something moved. Not a creature in any traditional sense, but a collection of interconnected energy forms that shifted and merged. It looked like a living network, conscious but completely alien to human understanding. Hoon's radiation detector went crazy. The reading suggested multiple energy signatures that defied current scientific classification. Whatever inhabited this world was far beyond their previous understanding of life. "This isn't just evolution," Day whispered. "This is complete transformation." Historical records they had preserved suggested a catastrophic event had occurred centuries before their preservation. But this was beyond any predicted scenario. The world hadn't just changed. It had been completely reimagined. Geological markers confirmed their cryosleep duration. Exactly 800,047 years. Each step revealed layers of transformation. Rocks that seemed to breathe. Ground that responded to their movement. An atmosphere that felt more like a living organism than an environmental condition. Una discovered something remarkable in her initial scans. Traces of human DNA existed in the environment, not as complete organisms, but as integrated fragments. Something had preserved humanity's genetic potential, spreading it across this new world like seeds of possibility. A sudden wind swept across the landscape. But it wasn't just wind. It carried information, complex data patterns that danced around them. Jay felt something touch his consciousness, a brief moment of connection that felt both alien and strangely familiar. "We're not alone," Kai said quietly. "And we're not the first." The crystal tree-like structures began to pulse, not with light, but with something deeper, a communication method that existed between pure energy and solid matter. They were watching, observing, waiting. Hoon's hand moved to a preservation device, a last resort genetic reconstruction tool. Their mission was more than survival. They carried the potential to restart an entire species, to bridge the impossible gap between what was and what could be. The lavender sky darkened momentarily, not from clouds but from a collective movement of the microscopic organisms that filled the atmosphere. They seemed to be responding to the human presence, creating complex patterns that suggested a form of collective intelligence. Day mapped their initial exploration zone. Each step revealed new mysteries: soil that wasn't soil, rocks that contained complex computational networks, an environment that was simultaneously dead and incredibly alive. "We are not where we thought we would be," Jay observed, his voice calm despite the incredible surroundings. The world around them continued its silent dance, waiting, watching, potentially recognizing the return of its original architects. Their first day of exploration had revealed one absolute truth. Everything they knew about survival, about life itself, would need to be completely reimagined. The journey was just beginning. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this narrative segment? The story maintains a simple and basic English approach while creating an intriguing and mysterious atmosphere of exploration and discovery. The first contact happened without warning. One moment, the team was carefully mapping their surroundings. The next, the entire landscape shifted. Waves of light began to form complex patterns around them. Not random light, but purposeful communication. Key's communication device went crazy, picking up signals that weren't radio waves, weren't sound, weren't anything they had previously understood as communication. "Something's happening," Hoon whispered. The energy network approached slowly. It moved like liquid thought, shifting between solid and energy states. Transparent shapes formed and dissolved, creating intricate patterns that seemed to carry meaning. Day realized they were being studied, not threatened but carefully examined. A pulse of information suddenly invaded their consciousness. Not words, not images, pure concepts that translated themselves almost instantly in their minds. The network was trying to communicate. "We know you," the concept message suggested. "You are the creators." Jay stood perfectly still. His training kicked in, keeping his body language neutral. Whatever this intelligence was, it seemed to be responding to their presence with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Yuna's environmental scanner showed impossible readings. The network wasn't just intelligent. It was alive in a way that defied traditional understanding. Part machine, part organic intelligence, part something completely unknown. Fragments of information began to download into their understanding. Humanity hadn't disappeared. They had transformed. Their genetic potential had been spread across multiple evolutionary pathways, creating complex networks of intelligence that had continued their legacy. "We preserved your potential," the network communicated. "We are the children of your imagination." Key noticed something extraordinary. The network was composed of billions of interconnected units, each carrying fragments of human technological and genetic memory. They weren't just inheritors. They were a living continuation of human potential. The crystal structures around them began to pulse, not with light but with complex information streams. They were part of the network, additional communication, nodes that extended the intelligence across the landscape. Hoon's hand moved slowly toward his preservation device, but there was no threat, only a profound sense of recognition. "We have waited," the network continued. "We have prepared." Day realized the full meaning. This wasn't just a random alien intelligence. This was a carefully constructed evolutionary pathway that humanity had unknowingly initiated centuries before their preservation. Microscopic organisms in the atmosphere began to form complex geometric shapes. They were listening, watching, part of the larger network that surrounded the human team. Yuna's genetic analysis showed something remarkable. Fragments of human DNA were integrated into the network's structure, not as complete organisms, but as fundamental building blocks of its intelligence. "You are home," the network suggested. But home meant something different. A continuation, an evolution, a rebirth. Jay felt a strange sense of peace. They weren't conquerors. They weren't survivors. They were reconnectors. The landscape continued its silent dance. The network moved around them, revealing glimpses of a world that had grown from humanity's most profound potential. Technological dreams, genetic possibilities, evolutionary pathways that had continued long after their original creators had disappeared. "We are ready," the network communicated, a simple statement that carried infinite complexity. Their mission was changing, from preservation to something much larger, from survival to reconnection. The first day of contact ended with more questions than answers, but they were no longer alone. They were part of something much larger than themselves. The inheritors had been waiting, and now they were finally home. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this narrative segment? The story maintains a simple and basic English approach while creating an intriguing narrative of unexpected connection and evolutionary potential. Sue's fingers moved across holographic interfaces, reconstructing fragments of lost human knowledge. Each recovered piece was like solving a complex puzzle that stretched across centuries of forgotten history. The preservation complex held more than just human survivors. It was a blueprint, a genetic library that could restart entire civilizations. Massive databanks contained centuries of scientific research, technological innovations, and human potential. "We're more than survivors," Jay explained to the team. "We're a reset mechanism for human potential." The network that surrounded them began assisting in the reconstruction. Quantum information streams flowed through their preservation technology, filling gaps in their historical understanding. Humanity's last moments before preservation became clearer, a desperate plan to ensure their species' survival against complete extinction. Una discovered something extraordinary. The genetic archives weren't just preservation records, they were evolutionary instructions. Centuries of scientific research had prepared for this exact moment. Humanity had planned its own resurrection. Microscopic machines within their preservation suits began interfacing with the surrounding network. They weren't just protecting the humans, they were learning, adapting, creating bridges between human consciousness and the new world's intelligence. The mission was never about survival, Hoon realized. It was about transformation. Crystal structures around them began to pulse with information. Historical records, scientific discoveries, technological innovations, all integrated into a living network that recognized the returning humans as its original architects. Day's environmental analysis showed something remarkable. The entire landscape was a massive computational system. Every crystal, every microscopic organism carried fragments of human technological memory. They hadn't just preserved humanity, they had spread its potential across an entire ecosystem. Key's communication systems began decoding complex information patterns. The network shared glimpses of humanity's journey, how their technological dreams had continued evolving long after their apparent extinction. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, quantum computing, all had become living, breathing systems. We are the children of your potential, the network communicated. Not a threat, but a profound statement of continued existence. Sue's reconstruction efforts revealed the true scale of their mission. Humanity's last generation hadn't just created a preservation plan, they had designed a complete evolutionary pathway. A way to ensure that human potential could restart, even if the original species disappeared. The preservation complex began its full activation sequence. Systems that had waited centuries suddenly hummed with purpose. Genetic reconstruction tools powered up. Technological archives started downloading their complete contents. Jay watched as the first genetic reconstruction began. Not just cloning, but a complex process of evolutionary potential, taking the best of human genetic memory and preparing it for a new world. We are the reset button, he whispered. The network responded with a pulse of pure potential. Waves of information danced around them, showing glimpses of possible futures. Humanity wasn't just returning, it was being reborn. Una's hand hovered over the final activation sequence. One touch would restart humanity's journey, not as conquerors, not as survivors, but as evolutionary architects. The crystal structures around them seemed to hold their breath. Microscopic organisms paused in their complex dance. The entire ecosystem waited. Are we ready? Hoon asked. Jay smiled. A simple human expression that carried centuries of hope, potential, and determination. We've been ready for 800,000 years. The activation sequence began. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this narrative segment? The story maintains a simple and basic English approach while creating an intriguing narrative of technological and genetic resurrection. Una's hand touched the sequence, and the world around them transformed. Not violently, not suddenly, but with a slow, deliberate awakening that felt like breathing after centuries of silence. Genetic reconstruction systems powered up. Complex machines that were part technology, part living organism, began their careful work. They weren't just rebuilding human bodies, they were rewriting the potential of an entire species. Jay watched as the first reconstructed cells began to form. Tiny clusters of potential, carrying memories of humanity's most profound achievements. Fragments of scientific discovery, technological innovation, and human emotion integrated into living systems. The network that surrounded them pulsed with anticipation. Millions of interconnected intelligence units watched, participated, supported the reconstruction process. They weren't observers, they were collaborators in humanity's rebirth. We are completing a cycle, the network communicated, a concept that was part memory, part promise. Hoon's environmental systems tracked the reconstruction. Each moment revealed something extraordinary. They weren't just recreating humans, they were evolving the very concept of human existence. Microscopic organisms in the atmosphere began to form complex patterns. They were part of the reconstruction, carrying genetic information, supporting the delicate process of rebirth. Day discovered something remarkable in the reconstruction data. The new humans would carry the memories of their predecessors, not as direct memories but as integrated potential, centuries of human experience compressed into genetic potential. Kai's communication system showed the broader impact. The entire ecosystem was participating. Crystal structures, energy networks, microscopic life forms, all working together to support this moment of renewal. Sue monitored the genetic mapping. Each reconstructed cell carried multiple layers of potential. Scientific knowledge, emotional, complexity, evolutionary adaptation. Humanity was being reborn with its most profound capabilities enhanced. The lavender sky seemed to hold its breath. Waves of energy danced around the reconstruction chamber. The world itself felt like it was watching, waiting, supporting this moment of incredible potential. "We are more than we were," Una whispered. The first fully reconstructed human took shape, not a clone, not a copy, but a new being carrying the potential of centuries of human evolution. Eyes opened, looking not with confusion, but with a deep, integrated understanding. The network pulsed with welcome, not just acceptance, but profound recognition. Jay realized the true nature of their mission. They weren't just preserving humanity, they were evolving it, creating a species that could survive, adapt, and thrive in ways their original creators could never have imagined. More reconstructed humans began to form, each one unique, each one carrying the collective potential of human experience. "Welcome, home," the network communicated. The reconstruction chamber became a birthplace of potential. Technological miracles happening with each passing moment. Humanity was being reborn, not as it was, but as it could be. Hoon watched the first reconstructed human take a step, confident, aware, carrying centuries of evolved potential in every movement. The crystal structures around them began to pulse. Not with light, but with a complex communication that felt like celebration. Welcome, continuation. Day's systems showed something extraordinary. The reconstructed humans weren't just biological beings. They were integrated with the network, carrying technological potential within their very genetic structure. "We are ready," the first reconstructed human said, not a statement of uncertainty, but a declaration of profound potential. The world around them continued its complex dance. Microscopic organisms, energy networks, living technologies, all working together in a complex symphony of rebirth. Humanity had returned, but it was not the same humanity that had disappeared centuries ago. It was something more. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this narrative segment? The story maintains a simple and basic English approach while creating an intriguing narrative of technological and genetic resurrection.